All right, we are live for Mile High Market Mastery. Thank you so much for popping on. Everyone is predicting something different for 2026. We have NAR coming out and saying prices are going to be at 4% and all of these amazing things. We have some other places like Fannie Mae and MBA and Moody's all talking about different things. And I'm here to talk to you exactly what it means for us here in Denver, Colorado, and Northern Colorado. I'm going to help you understand and hopefully get to the bottom of what actually to expect. And at the end of the day, it's really all about you. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen, but I'm here to help you understand what I'm seeing, especially in Denver and Northern Colorado, and what I think could be massive opportunities for both people on both sides of the scale. So let's talk about this. There's four major broadcasting places talking about what they're saying. They're broadcasting their opinions out on everybody else. The truth is, those are big national firms. And as we know, real estate's hyper-local, right? So the conflicting forecasts make it so it's not clear. We've been saying that interest rates were going to go down for 2 or 3 years, date the rate, marry the mortgage. Turned out to be marry the mortgage and the rate, and it's kind of a weird situation there. So we need to understand what it looks like for our personal selves. If you're thinking about moving in Denver or Northern Colorado, now is the time to sit back and give me a call and let's have a conversation about your situation, because it could be a great time for you to move. It could be a really bad time for you to move. And so here we are. We're going to dive in. We're going to talk about this. If you want to make moves in the investment space, I'm Jeremy Kane with eXp Realty in Denver and Northern Colorado, and I help all people build wealth through real estate. As someone who purchased my first house when I was 19, it's become my passion to help people build wealth and make good decisions in real estate, and I've done a pretty good job so far. Track record's certainly there. So call me, text me, send me a DM wherever you're watching, and let's roll. So first and foremost, we'll go to NAR. Right? National Association of Realtors, everybody's favorite organization to either love or hate or both or change on a day-to-day, right? They're saying that we're going to see a 14% prediction in home sales. This is something, well, let's talk about this. Over the last few years, home sales have been a little bit rough. And so this doesn't sit poorly with me as a real estate agent. This is probably one of my favorite things NAR's put out in a while. So if we do see a 14% jump in home sales, that's transactions happening, then we will certainly love that as agents. That means things are moving. That means the market's moving. That means people are making money. And that's ultimately the end goal here, and to provide shelter. So they do predict a 4% growth in price. I would be shocked if a national average jumped actually 4%. But we're going to dive in. We're going to figure that out. We're going to see what's going on. And that's certainly there. They believe that, the reason for these things is the supply shortage and easing rates will keep prices rising, right? They're betting on demand. They're betting on people coming out and the demand going. Home prices nationwide are in no danger of declining, according to the article that I read. The NAR president came out and said that. I mean, as a blanket statement, this is rough. What's declining, right? Because everybody has access to their home values on Zillow and other places. Maybe we don't need to talk about that whole situation that's going on. But ultimately, if we're talking about home prices and we're saying nationwide, there's at no risk to go down. Your market may be different than mine, but we could see a little bit of a decline from, what we're seeing on paper, what we're seeing on HomeBot, what we're seeing on Zillow, what you're seeing from your agent and that thing that they send you every month, depending on where it's at, right? We could definitely see something like this, a slight decrease somewhere along the way. So Fannie Mae predicts a little bit more conservative, right? 1.3% price growth. This is kind of where we've been sitting. I would call this flat. This means you're going to definitely have some, lower people, people that lose a little bit, people that gain a little bit, not a lot of, crazy jumps in value. So That is absolutely the key there. Sales growth and moderately lower rates, right? All of these predictions came between 5.9 and 7, right? So they're not really going too crazy. They're definitely focusing on the rates and everything in a very stable manner, right? And I think that's what the market is saying. Certainly, the market is going to be more healthy if those rates stabilize and we're not seeing these, crazy days of going up and then they just kind of tick back down, or crazy days going down and then tick back up and kind of stay right where they're at. So all of these places were kind of in between the 5.9 and 7, guesstimate for what rates are going to look like. We'll see. I'm not a lender, right? MBA was a little bit more bearish. They predict declining prices. So here they come out. They're just swinging from all sides. We're going to see declining prices for several quarters. And so that's something to keep an eye on. Their reason is higher inventory and affordability concerns. Affordability has been the word. If you've watched my channels across any social media, last week we talked all about the 50-year mortgage and the hype that was surrounded, and that's pretty much dead in the water. Now you're going to start hearing portable mortgages and assumables. This is something that, sounds like a great idea on paper, but honestly would take so long to reformat our entire loan process, because the truth is the majority of loans are conventional, and they are not assumable at this time. So it'd be a complete 180, and definitely portable mortgages are not a thing. So that would be a complete takedown of our mortgage situation, and it's not going to be available to fix, affordability within a year. I'll tell you that right now. It's going to take a little bit longer to do that. So MBA does predict higher loan originations, right? So more transactions here, maybe some refis, those kind of things. So that's an interesting kind of thing. We're going to go up in transactions. That's positive. I will tell you that the last 2 years have been, 30-year lows in that category. So something definitely to keep an eye on. Then we're going to go over to Moody's. They're saying it's going to be flat, right? So there's so many different things that people are talking about pricing wise from a nation's perspective. I would say that saying it's going to be flat when you're talking about multiple markets and real estate being hyperlocal and all of that will absolutely lead to a more flat piece. But let's be real, right? If home prices go up 1.3, that's flat too. So that's what we really need to kind of focus on. They're saying price increases 0.48, and calling for the next decade of prolonged stagnation. We're going to see a lot of stagnation, no real, gains. This would be something that would be uncharacteristic of our real estate market. I think there's enough outside things that are happening and going on that within our real estate market, like there's so many external possibilities. Like I would imagine that we will not just stay stagnant for 10 years. We've never done that. So certainly something to keep an eye on. So what do you think? What do you think the closest is to reality? Are we going to have huge jumps like NAR? Are we going to go down like MBA said? Are we going to stay flat, more like Fannie Mae and Moody's? What do you think? Put it in the comments. We'll just go flat, little bit of a jump, or a decline based on the housing market. So put that in the comments and let me know what you think. We certainly can jump into those. Let me throw comments up here. If I see anything, I will certainly chat. So as you can see, 4 different national publications, 4 very different outlooks. So what's that mean for buyers, right? Again, as I always say, and if you are thinking about buying, let's have a conversation, because truthfully, none of this matters. I'd rather have a conversation with you, see where you're at, make sure that we're making the right moves, getting you prepared to buy a home, whether the interest rates are high and we have to use some strategy to keep that affordability where it needs to be, or the interest rates fall and we have to use some strategies to get you in with higher competition and all of that. So let's jam out on that. So more inventory means a little bit less chaos, a lot more options, maybe a little bit more leverage on the negotiation side. 82% of it, transactions are seeing some sort of, price reduction, whether that's, they're lowering the price to get activity and get people through it and get an offer, or the sellers are giving some concessions and things like that. When we're talking about sellers and concessions and list price and all of that, we're focused on net cost, net gain basically for the seller. So just know that. And yeah, another opportunity is rate relief, right? If we get to the mid sixes, we stay pretty normal and stay between 6 and 7. I mean, here's the deal: if you're still waiting around with your 3% high school trophy that you have on your interest rate, this could be a time for you to step up and figure some things out and maybe make some moves. Because if we're sitting in the low 6s and you get some buy downs, all of a sudden you're high 4s, low 5s, like there's opportunity there for you to make moves. And it's certainly, if you can hold on to that lower interest rate and rent it out, you're going to have a cash flow positive property if it's in any good sort of condition. And let's be real, all of us take amazing care of our houses because you watch my channel and you reach out to me whenever you need anything, and I can connect you with the right people in Denver and Northern Colorado to make sure that your house is staying in tip-top shape. So what are the challenges for buyers in 2026? Affordability is here to stay. The 50-year mortgage isn't coming here to save you. The portable mortgage isn't coming here to save you. And you're not getting a major raise at your job typically, because obviously we've seen what the economy's done over the years. So pretty much the only route to making everything go poof and affordability is certainly Bitcoin and crypto, only on days that things are good, not so much when they're bad. So definitely keep your eyes on that affordability. Make sure you're staying within your means, and make sure we're planning. Like, now is the time to budget, double down on that budget. The future is only going to be more expensive, and a lot of times we focus so much on college and weddings for our kids and all of those. Well, our personal finances are certainly part of that as well. So if you need a connection to a great financial planner, tax accountant, I got you. As always, reach out, 303-210-0378. Shoot me a DM if you're watching on the short form platforms, and we'll go from there. Next is, ownership costs, right? With inflation, everything's going up. Taxes and insurance are insane here in Denver and Northern Colorado. We're talking 45% for those two, mortgage add-ons since 2020. So everything's getting a little bit more expensive. We still know the eggs are expensive. Gas has been a little bit better, but the cost of living is overall expensive. And so the cost of owning a home is more expensive. It costs more to, get a new furnace. It has to, have the upgraded efficiencies and things like that. So higher ownership costs are certainly a challenge, and something that I talk to all of my clients about. If you're buying a house, we need to focus on, okay, houses break. So what do you got in the slush fund? What are we going to do there? And we'll get rolling. So prices are still high. No one credible predicts a major crash. So it's, how you determine crash, and the headlines are going to talk crash. Like, the truth is that we're kind of at a stable point. Foreclosures have not risen, although I do know that a lot of people have certainly, doubled down into that. But here's the deal: foreclosures don't mean free houses. So just because there's a foreclosure doesn't mean that, every first-time home buyer is just going to be able to jump in there for a cheap house and go from there and not be affected, not have the whole economy be affected and so on. So foreclosures, I think they will come back in certain markets. They have not come back in ours, which actually I'm a little bit surprised of. But pre-foreclosures and things like that, delinquencies, everybody's got debt. Everybody's got, some debt piling up, it seems like, where we're at. So honestly, if we're in a super tough financial situation nationally, I mean, the only thing, something has to break. Now, if you're in that situation and you need to have a conversation, like, let's have a conversation as soon as possible. There are options. We certainly want to capture any equity that you have if you're just in a position where it's not going to work out, you can't make it happen, because ultimately foreclosure is just making the banks richer. And if you do have equity in that home, we certainly want to, get that and pull that out for you. So definitely some things to think about there as we go. But so some strategic advice for my buyers out there: focus on the total cost of ownership. Make sure that you're saving as much as you possibly can. The cost of getting a home is not just about your interest rate and your mortgage. It's about all of the things. If you're getting a bigger house, you're going to have higher energy costs and all of that. So make sure that you're there, but also houses break, right? And we still need cars, and we still need to put food on the table, and we still need to do a lot of things. So make sure we're focused on that, budgeting, dialing in. You need more than you think. You need more than 3% down, or 3.5% down, or 20% down. You need to make sure that you do have a rainy day fund, and the rainy day fund keeps going up because you can't get a furnace for $1,500 anymore. So those are certainly there. Prices are still high. We have not seen, a correction like maybe people have expected or thought of. So that's super important to kind of dive into and think about as we move forward. So then let's move to and finally be open to regional pockets, right? Be open to a little bit of a commute into work, or some of those things. There are different pockets in different regions. I mean, I was showing detached homes in Centennial, Colorado for $450 this weekend, and they weren't terrible. So while we're talking about affordability and things like that, prices have certainly leveled off, at least in some areas. And whether you see that as a price decline because someone owned a house for 10 years and they saw it on Zillow that it was worth $100,000 more than they're selling it for, that's a whole other ballgame. So make sure you're paying attention to that. Make sure you're paying attention to those regional spots where you can maybe get a deal, maybe you're a little bit cooler, or so on. So that's super important to kind of dive into. So if you're even considering buying in 2026, now is your time. Shoot me a DM. We can hang out. We can chat. And I want to make a custom plan for you, because we're talking a lot in generalities. We're talking about national, statistics and things like that. That has nothing to do with you in Thornton, Colorado, or Aurora, Colorado, or Greeley, Colorado, or Fort Collins, Colorado. It's all a little bit different. So, or wherever you're at watching, right? I'm in Colorado, but I do actually have agents across the world and country. So if you are thinking about buying, you want me to be a part of that process, let's have a conversation, and I'll make sure you're set up with the best of the best, and we're making good decisions along the way. So let's flip the script a little bit. What's this mean for sellers? I think there's massive equity cushions still. If you've owned your home for more than 4 or 5 years, you are sitting on a little bit of money, probably your biggest savings account, because let's be real, American savings accounts aren't very good right now. So that's number one. More buyers are entering the market. They're sick of waiting. As we go, as time goes on, it's just going to have to break loose. Every time the rates go down, more buyers come to the market. Maybe they sit on the sidelines after the fact, but for now, more buyers are entering the market, and obviously that's an opportunity for sellers. Modest but positive price appreciation. We haven't seen the huge crashes that we might have seen with the massive interest rate jumps of the past. We've kind of held strong. I don't know if that's because sellers are a little bit tight with their ability to just let go of the market a little bit, or honestly, buyers are finding those opportunities, right? Instead of massive price reductions and concessions, maybe we're fitting into concessions, getting that higher interest rate bought down. And that's the biggest thing, because so many people focus on this pie in the sky interest rate. And when there's less competition and seller concessions exist, we are having the opportunity to absolutely do pretty amazing things in this market. So again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. But let's talk a little bit about the challenges, right? What are challenges sellers are saying? Well, I'm telling you right now that we're talking about inventory rising. So that means competition is going up, slower price growth, right? And so sellers are a little bit more picky. With the conjunction of higher interest rates, buyers are paying more for the mortgage payment than you paid, even if they bought it for the same price that you bought it, which we know isn't happening. And so what that's pushing them to do is make sure that the home is going to last them without having any major breakdown. So inspections are a part of the process, and they're absolutely massive right now in what's going on, right? Buyers are asking for a lot on inspections. Buyers are getting a lot on inspections, and they're requiring it. And the truth is, if there's enough wrong, they're terminating an inspection because they know that the seller's not going to do it. So they just walk away. And so we need to make sure that the home for sellers is ready to roll, and understand that maybe this person that's moving into your home is going to have a $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 payment. And so maybe that old furnace that doesn't have anything wrong with it, that heats the house just great, but the parts aren't in existence anymore and it's not safe. Like, maybe we do need a new furnace. And so we need to focus on that. We need to understand. Rate lock effect, obviously, sellers are trapped, right? They feel trapped. They don't want to give up that 2%, 3% interest rate. As you guys know from watching this channel, watching on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and all of the sources, wherever you're at, just throw me a like right now. Throw me a comment. Tell me you're here so I can hear, so I can see you. Shout out. Thanks so much for looking on TikTok live. That's pretty awesome. So as we kind of talk about this, if you're locked in a rate and you have a ton of credit and you have a ton of debt piling up, what's your blended rate, right? Because are we piling up debt on a credit card because we're not keeping up with the bills, and we're paying 30% over here, but we have this 2.5% over here? Well, at some point, maybe a 6% rate makes sense. And I'm not encouraging people to build up debt and refinance and make the banks richer, but ultimately, like, we need to look at that a little bit differently as as debt as a whole, not just our mortgage debt and so on. So, and of course, anything you can do to hold on that 2 or 3%, HELOCs, things like that. Not usually for transient debt, though. We usually don't want to do that ultimately. So, and then, another challenge, which kind of, is both sides, is affordability definitely limits the buyers and what they're willing to do and offer, and of course on the inspection. So here's the deal. If you're a seller, pricing realistically is of utmost importance. And, sometimes even if you price realistically, you have the comps and then you start getting undercut. Like, it is what it is, and it's brutal right now. So I want you to know that you need to price aggressively, and we'll call that realistic at this stage of the game, especially heading into the winter in the Denver and Northern Colorado regions. The next thing is prep matters, right? Putting money into it, your deferred maintenance, paint, everything, because people are paying a lot more, so they want to walk into your house and they want to roll, right? They don't necessarily want to, paint or do these things. So if you are able and you're putting your house on the market, and make sure it's in tip-top shape, throw me a like if you're out there watching. I would appreciate that for sure. Let me know if you have questions about the real estate market, comments, all of those things. I love all the comments for sure. So so pricing realistically, number one. Prep matters more than ever. Let's optimize timing and understanding of your micro market. Right? Timing is of utmost importance. If you got a family and so on, you don't want people in your house through the holidays, like, be smart about that. But also, if it's vacant, like, let's get it on the market. You never know when that perfect buyer is going to come in, but pricing aggressively is obviously the key point. If your life situation, changes, it still matters more than the forecast. We got to sell it. We got to do it. But we also have to price it accordingly if we need a quick sale and so on. Otherwise, you price it too high and you end up, dropping below maybe where we could have priced it strategically. So I have great stuff on pricing strategies, and we can talk all about that. Absolutely. So if you're thinking about selling before you hire anyone or make any repairs, text me. I'll come walk through your house. I'll tell you what it's worth. I'll be open and honest. If you have another real estate agent, I just want to have a conversation, be a part of that story for you, and help you however I can. So definitely reach out, shoot me a DM, comment on here, sell in 2026, buy in 2026, and we will make that happen. If that's truly your mission and your passion, comment those things, shoot me a DM. I don't care how far away from home ownership you think you are. We'll get you there in the littlest amount of time possible on your terms. So here's the deal. Big picture. Let's zoom out. What's 2026 look like? here's the deal. It's not going to be a crash. I don't think it's going to be a boom. I think NAR's a little bit bullish on their 4% and 14% increase in transactions. I hope that's the truth and that's the case. And a lot of people start to, the market shakes loose, but that would be a complete market shaking loose and things, kind of going back to a little bit more chaos that maybe we grew accustomed to. So these slower markets are tough. Probably a more balanced than a more normal market, right? We see different things. We're having weird seasonal trends. It's not, very standard seasonal for Colorado where we start picking up in late January, early February, and we kind of fall off as the summer comes, and then we kind of stable off and through July and August, and then we see a little bump in the fall, and then we kind of go dormant in the winter. So that's not the seasonal trend that we've seen this year, and I think that continues through 2026 is kind of a very market-based. What's going on? What's this consumer sentiment? What's those interest rates? What's the inventory levels look like? I think that's a lot more balanced than normal for sure as we go. So affordability is going to be a constraint. We have to come up with some ideas, some ways to fix this. As for now, the rate buy downs is kind of running the show. And so those, costs of ownership and things like that are certainly things to keep an eye on. So I think a reset year for sure. I don't think it's a runway year as we move forward into 2026. Now, you may have a micro market that's going to, gain a little bit, or, maybe a micro market that's going to lose a little bit. But so tell me what you guys think. Would a slightly more balanced market, or I guess, would a slightly more balanced, more comfortable, more predictable market make you more or less likely to make a move? Drop it in the comments and we'll check that out for sure. And reach out, like I said, if a move's in your future, let's have a conversation. Let's make that happen. So here's the deal. 2026 is shaping up to be a transitional year. I think it's going to be a great year for a lot of different reasons. I think in real estate, we are going to continue to play the market. We're going to continue seeing it. Buyers, you're going to have more power than you've had in 5+ years, and I think that continues. Sellers, I think you're still going to be sitting strong on your equity. You're going to have a little bit of, leeway still. There will be those people that bought over the last 2 years probably that have to make a move, that are in a pretty tight situation as it pertains to, the cost, especially if you're a first-time home buyer with low down payment or down payment assistance. It can be a pretty tough situation for you to be in. Maybe we can clear some of it out with renting, but it likely will not be a cash flow situation. So if you're in that situation, please reach out. We can have a conversation. We can make sure that we can put our best foot forward to help you out. Rates will be stable, I'm hoping. They certainly won't crash. They're certainly not going back to 3. I would be shocked if we even touch 4 or mid-5s, to be honest with you. I'm kind of with the 4 big dogs that put these reports out there. We're going to kind of stay where we're at, go up a little bit, come down a little bit, but stay pretty neutral, kind of in that low to mid 6s. But I'm not a lender. I'm not a crystal ball guy. So we'll see how that turns out. And prices, I think, will continue to stay slow to moderate, likely flat. I don't see I would be shocked if we see any markets with, 6 or 7% increases, just because we have to kind of sort this out. We're still recovering from the 3% interest rate bidding wars that, define 2020 through 2022, 2023. So, yeah. So if you have any questions about Denver, Northern Colorado, you're thinking about moving here, definitely not all doom and gloom. Definitely not anything, super flashy that, we can't wait to look forward to. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Please comment, like, subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions, or anybody has any questions about real estate, let's have a conversation. Shoot me a DM, connect me, and we'll certainly take care of them. So see you next time on Mile High Market Mastery. Peace.